Nyalche Chembo to Nimi Jang, Donan Manum Chembo, Nagada, Bankara Dargam Santo, Sherman, Stumba to Jejan Laki, Shom Sir Nation Roar Zerni Jangamsa, and Jawar to Egyptian, Yelaman, Jimmy Banzojala, Soran. Gonjo Tobam for a Shinjilo, Gonjo Tobam for a Shinjilo, Gonjo Tobam for a Shinjilo.
Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching.
Today we will continue our teaching on the Shurangama Sutra. In the Shurangama Sutra, we are currently discussing the Buddha's 25 great disciples. Each of them attained enlightenment through their own practice. This is the principle being taught. Each person speaks by way of self-introduction. Yesterday and previously, we covered form, sound, smell, taste, and touch. We have already discussed the 5 great disciples who each attained enlightenment by relying on the external 5 objects of perception. We have already talked about their experiences. Today, we will begin discussing the objects of dharmas and the 5 sensory faculties, and those who attained enlightenment through the 5 faculties. Again, each person tells their own story. Actually, if we were to put on a performance of this in the future, it would be quite wonderful. For example, to put it in simple terms, Venerable Mahākāśyapa would come up and say, "This is how I attained enlightenment," giving a brief explanation. Then Kṣudrapanthaka would come up and say, "This is how I attained enlightenment." And then the arhats and bodhisattvas we mentioned yesterday and previously would come up. This way everyone might think, "Oh, this is how I attained enlightenment at that time." Watching a play like this would probably be very meaningful. This enlightenment process from the Shurangama Sutra in the future, if you have the opportunity, or if you ever have any Vajra entertainment activities like dancing, we could perform a dance based on the Shurangama Sutra, showing how the 25 great disciples attained enlightenment. Each person would say, in front of the Buddha, this is how I realized enlightenment at that time. And today we are talking about Venerable Mahākāśyapa, who brings Bhikshuni purple golden radiance along. This is how the 2 of us attained enlightenment at that time. This would be quite nice. Let's wait and see if we can do this in the future. So today we are discussing the 6th disciple, that is Mahākāśyapa. The Buddha speaks in the sutra as follows. Mahākāśyapa stood up with Bhikshuni purple golden radiance and others, and they bowed at the Buddha's feet and said to him respectfully, "When appeared in this world during a previous eon, the Buddha sun, moon and lamplight, I had the opportunity to follow him, to hear the Dharma and to study and practice it." Hodidik. Here it mentions Mahākāśyapa or Great Kāśyapa. Maha means great. Great Kāśyapa, along with Bhikshuni purple golden radiance. Sometimes we refer to her as Bhikshuni golden radiance. The word others includes perhaps other followers as well. They stood up from their seats, and after bowing at the Buddha's feet, they respectfully spoke to the Buddha, saying, during a past eon in this Saha world, a Buddha appeared in the world. This Buddha's name was Sun, Moon and Lamplight. Sun, Moon and Lamplight, 3 words. At that time I had the opportunity to follow this Buddha and to hear the Dharma and to study and practice it. This is speaking of Venerable Mahākāśyapa and a story from his past. Actually, we have talked about Venerable Mahākāśyapa before. His story is quite fascinating. It seems his parents really wanted to have a child, but they never had one. Later, he prayed to a nearby tree spirit. He prayed for 3 years. After praying for 3 years, it still didn't work. Later, he made a fierce vow, saying, "I will pray for another 7 days. If I don't see any signs after these 7 days, if there's no sign of having a child, then I will chop you down." After he said this, the tree spirit became terrified. The spirit ran to beg the 4 heavenly kings. The 4 heavenly kings couldn't help either. Then he went to beg Lord Indra. Lord Indra observed the situation and saw that this family's merit was immense. In the entire desire realm, there was no way to find someone who could be reborn into their family, so he directly went to Lord Brahma. When Brahma observed using his divine eye, it just so happened that in the Brahma realm there was a celestial being whose lifespan had ended and was about to descend. At this time he pleaded, asking if this being could go to that family. The celestial being said, "I can go, but I'm afraid I might develop wrong views and fall into lower realms." Then Brahma said, "Don't worry, I will instruct the local earth spirits and the 4 heavenly kings to protect you. You will not develop wrong views." Later, this celestial being was directly reborn into this person's family from the time he was born, because in the past, in the presence of many Tathagatas, he had formed the habit of ordaining and practicing. In this life he did not want to be a householder, he strongly desired to become a monk. But his father primarily wanted him to inherit the family business, so he kept demanding that he remain a householder, but he consistently refused. Later, when he was truly forced and had no other choice, he said, "Well, if I must get married," because of the merit from his past offerings, his body was completely golden in color. He said, "If I must get married, you must find someone who is exactly like me, a woman whose body is entirely golden, a purple golden hue. I will only agree to marry such a woman." Now, their family had quite a lot of influence. After searching far and wide, indeed, they found such a golden woman. As it happened, this woman also wished to become a nun. She did not want to live a worldly life. Later, because she, the woman's side, also heard that if she went to his family, since their family had considerable wealth, power, and prestige, so she agreed. But later the parents of both families locked them together in a room, yet they were constantly unwilling to break the precepts they were upholding. The room was divided in the middle, and they each slept in their own section. Later their families locked the 2 of them in a single room again. Locked in one room, they were left with 2 beds, and they each slept in their own. Then even one of the beds was removed, they were left with only 1 bed. At this point, during the first half of the night, one would sleep while the other stood, and they kept doing this. Then one time, it seems Bhikshuni Purple Golden Radiance was just about to fall asleep when a venomous snake slithered up and wrapped around her hand. Mahākāśyapa used the handle of a fan to move it away. At that moment she suddenly woke up in shock. Waking in shock, she said, "Were you touching my body?" At that time Mahākāśyapa said, "No, I wasn't. There was a venomous snake, and I wanted to drive it away." She said, "If a venomous snake touches my body, I would rather have a venomous snake touch my body, which would only destroy this one life. But a man must not touch me. Otherwise I would fall into lower realms for lifetime after lifetime." Through this manner, on one hand, perhaps due to the habits from their past lives, and on the other hand, due to this strict upholding of self-discipline, one could say for these reasons they lived like this for 12 years. Yet they never incurred the stain of breaking their precepts. Therefore, in the entire history of Buddhism, these 2 are very exemplary. When His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche spoke about this before, he said, generally speaking, as ordinary people, if people of the opposite sex live together, it is hard to avoid being stained by the fault of breaking precepts. But if it is someone like Venerable Mahākāśyapa, that is a special exception. This story in the Pure Land teachings we translated before, that is to say, it is recorded in the commentary on the aspiration of Sukhavati. I remember the general meaning is roughly like this. Actually, this originates from the Vinaya Sutra. So at that time they were also under the Buddha's teachings. He is an exceptionally unique precept holder. Therefore, in Buddhist history, he lived with Bhikshuni Golden Radiance for 12 years, but did not incur the stain of breaking precepts. It's a situation like this. They went before the Buddha to request this, and recounted this history of theirs. After that, Buddha entered nirvana. I made offerings to his relics, and I lit lamps in order to perpetuate his radiance. I gilded an image of that Buddha so that it shone with a purple golden radiance. Then it talks about his later story, because just now it was the Buddha sun, moon and lamplight. Later this Buddha manifested entering nirvana. After he manifested nirvana, he made offerings to his relics. And in the process of making offerings to his relics, it mainly involved offering some lamps and incense. These were continued without interruption. He continuously made offerings in this way. Later on, when a certain time had passed, the stupa holding the relics might have developed some cracks. At this time he used purple gold and gold. Among gold there is yellow gold, and there is also purple gold, but the best is purple gold. Pure Jambunada gold is generally purple in color, so he used this purple golden hue, to gild the body of that Buddha image. Because of this, from that time onwards in life after life, my body has always been perfect and flawless, and has shone with a purple golden light. From that time onwards in lifetime after lifetime, his body was always perfect and flawless. Flawless in what way? Shining with a purple golden light. As for Mahākāśyapa, starting from that time, continuously, lifetime after lifetime, his physical appearance was so majestic, and his body color was also golden. Among people in the world today, some people have very good skin. Some people might really want to look beautiful, but their desires cannot achieve their desired goals, so sometimes they have beautiful dreams, but conversely, their physical appearance might be quite ugly. This is still related to our past lives, creating any kind of merit, especially like offering flowers or lamps before Buddha images, or even building stupas, or repairing Buddha halls. These actions are very meaningful. There is a connection. Then he talked about how his successive lifetimes came to be this way. Bhikshuni Purple Golden Radiance and these others with me were my followers, and together we made a commitment to become enlightened. Actually, Bhikshuni Purple Golden Radiance and these other followers had in fact made such a commitment in the past. This is also covered in the Samyuktavadana Sutra and other sutras as well. At that time the relic stupa of the Buddha sun, moon and lamplight, after a certain time began to decay a bit. At this time there was a poor woman. She begged everywhere and with great difficulty managed to get a little bit of gold. After getting the gold, she generated a remarkably good intention, preparing to repair the Buddha's relic stupa. At this time she found a craftsman. This craftsman had the skills, and the poor woman had the gold. Then the two of them began to do this work together. The craftsman was also exceptionally joyous. He applied his skills to gild the stupa with her gold. So at that time they made a vow together to be husband and wife lifetime after lifetime, while simultaneously making offerings to the three jewels, upholding pure precepts in the future, and doing meaningful work for the Tathagata's teachings and so on. They made this vow. Because of this vow, it seems they later became like this. Of course, this is possible. Some commentaries mention that earlier it was the Buddha's sun, moon and lamplight, and later, when they made their vow, it was probably in the presence of Vipassana Buddha, because some sutras state that when they made their vow in the past, it was made before Vipassana Buddha, so the vow was likely made later. Because of this, for 91 eons, both of their bodies radiated golden light. They were healthy, majestic, and so forth. They continuously practiced wholesome deeds in this way. This is their, one could say, their past history. Next it explains how he attained enlightenment. What I contemplated was the diminishing and perishing of the sixth kind of object, the objects of cognition. Simply by the practice of contemplating the emptiness and stillness of these mental objects, and thereby entering a samadhi of cessation, I am able with both body and mind to pass through 100,000 eons, as if they lasted no longer than a snap of the fingers. Then Venerable Mahākāśyapa said that he contemplated the six sense objects of the world: our form, sound, smell, taste, touch, and dharmas, including dharmas. So how did he practice this contemplation? Whether it's the objects of form or smell, all these sense objects ultimately diminish and perish, including the mental objects that are the objects of our consciousness. In the end, all these phenomena completely turn into a kind of illusion-like state that cannot be established. Ultimately, every one of the phenomena of form, sound, smell, taste, touch, and objects of cognition, when we observe them with wisdom, indeed, in the end we cannot grasp even the slightest mental object, we cannot grasp anything at all, cannot grasp anything, they all diminish and perish. Eventually they all become indivisible particles. At that point, this main aspect of diminishing and perishing, he didn't attain enlightenment through the six sense objects here. He attained enlightenment through the final mental objects. Attaining enlightenment through mental objects means that after the first five sense objects have perished, what remains is actually a kind of mental image. When this mental image appears before the consciousness, it is called an object of cognition. So he relied on the objects of cognition to attain enlightenment. Relying on the objects of cognition to attain enlightenment, the most ultimate subtle aspect of these phenomena is contemplating the emptiness and stillness. It is of the nature of emptiness, of cessation. The true essence of the six sense objects is emptiness and cessation. Then entering a samadhi of cessation, refers to what we call the absorption of cessation. It is free from all the discriminating thoughts of the sixth and seventh consciousnesses, a state of meditative concentration that pacifies all marks. He began to practice in this way. Eventually he succeeded. He succeeded by relying on dharmas. I am able with both body and mind to pass through 100,000 eons. Finally, his body and mind rested in a state of meditative concentration. Even if he remained in it for 100,000 eons, for him it was like the snap of a finger. It just felt like the snap of a finger. In reality, he remained in samadhi for that vast amount of time. Therefore, in the end, Venerable Mahākāśyapa is also sitting in samadhi at Mount Jisu. He will only emerge from samadhi when Bodhisattva Maitreya appears in the world. Because he attained enlightenment through the objects of cognition, he is not like us. If we sit for half an hour or an hour, I don't know how the meditation class is doing recently, whether it is very agonizing. Maybe I'd be better off studying Madhyamaka. Next year I'll come out and do some volunteer work. Sometimes for people who don't meditate well, forcing them to meditate is quite a painful experience. So for someone like Venerable Mahākāśyapa, 100,000 eons is like the time it takes to snap a finger. To him this time makes no difference, because his state of realization is very high. This is also why in the end the Buddha entrusted the Dharma to him. Actually the Buddha, when the Dharma was entrusted to him, he was already very old. Venerable Mahākāśyapa must have been over 20 years older than the Buddha. If the Buddha passed into parinirvana at the age of 81, Venerable Mahākāśyapa was at least over 100 years old by then. Therefore, when some of our Dharma masters look for a successor in the future, as long as they are capable, it's fine if they are older than you. For some successors in our senior citizens class, the Dharma master might be a bit younger, but you can entrust the Dharma to anyone capable. Because Venerable Mahākāśyapa, after the Buddha passed into parinirvana, as mentioned in our history of Tibetan Tantric Buddhism, he upheld the teachings for over 40 years, then he entrusted them to Venerable Ananda, Ananda entrusted them to Sanakhavasa, and so on, for a total of 7 generations. So looking at it from this perspective, Mahākāśyapa is the true successor of the Buddha's Dharma. But Mahākāśyapa's defining traits are, first, his meditative concentration was exceptionally good, and second, his ethical discipline was exceptionally remarkably good. Therefore, if the Buddha Dharma is truly to be entrusted to someone else, one aspect is that their ethical discipline must be very good, as well as their meditative concentration. Precepts, concentration, and wisdom. If precepts and concentration are very good, wisdom will naturally be excellent as well. Then he says here, I became an arhat by contemplating emptiness. The world-honored one has declared me foremost in the practice of beneficial asceticism. He relied on the contemplation of emptiness. Just now, from the first to the sixth sense object, everything ultimately dissolved into stillness and emptiness, and by relying on this emptiness, he attained the state of an arhat. Then the world-honored one said he was foremost in beneficial asceticism. Among all of the Buddha's disciples, he practiced the 12 ascetic practices. We've talked about this before. Generally speaking, even now, in Theravada Buddhism and in certain disciplinary codes, there are ascetic practices, truly embodying contentment and few desires. One's life is completely in a state of purity, without accumulating wealth or property, including what one sits on or sleeps on, all the resources one uses and enjoys. They are all entirely in accordance with ascetic practices. In his later years, many people urged Venerable Mahākāśyapa to live a more ordinary, comfortable life. He was never willing right up until he manifested passing into parinirvana. That is to say, whether it was his parinirvana or finally entering samadhi. Before that time, his conduct was always that of ascetic practice. So what did he realize? The wondrous Dharma was revealed, and I put an end to all outflows. By revealed or became clear, what did he reveal? Or what manifested before him? It was the most wondrous nature of phenomena. That is to say, the true, indivisible state of luminosity and emptiness of the Tathagata Garbha, or a state that is all-pervasive, permanent, and perfectly clear. This state had been enlightened, revealed, and had manifested before him, and at the same time he eliminated all defiled afflictions, primarily attachment, aversion, and ignorance. The Buddha has asked us how we broke through to enlightenment. Considering what I have attained, I believe that the contemplation of the objects of cognition is the best method. If the Buddha asks me about the cause of Bodhi, what my method for perfect penetration is, based on my realization, my own personal experience, I definitely acknowledge it is this Dharma. Contemplating the objects of cognition is supreme. Because he relied on mental objects, he realized emptiness through mental objects. He attained enlightenment by relying on this. Therefore, for him, the objects of cognition are supreme. So after our study this time, we see that in reality, every Dharma method is supreme. For example, there are many schools in Tibetan Buddhism, and there are also many schools in Han Buddhism. If it resonates with a person, no matter which school it is, for them it is supreme. If it does not resonate with them, even if others say it is the best, it might not necessarily be so for them. Thus, in Tibetan Buddhism, some people practice Dzogchen, some practice Mahamudra, and some practice Yamantaka. The Tibetan region seems to prefer many things are called great Madhyamaka, great perfection, great seal. It's the same in Han Buddhism, whether it's illuminating the mind and seeing one's true nature, or single-mindedly reciting the Buddha's name, and so on. Both the Pure Land and Zen traditions, for those who have an affinity with them, they can indeed attain enlightenment very quickly for that person this method is the most supreme. Sometimes we even say that regarding the two vehicles, the Sravaka and Pratyeka Buddha vehicles, for someone who has only realized the selflessness of the person, to them this is the most profound Dharma. If someone has relatively good driving skills, perhaps for them, driving a high-end luxury car is wonderful. If their skills are truly lacking, then for them, driving a tractor might be the best option. For them, it is truly the best kind of vehicle. Therefore, everyone's spiritual capacity is indeed different. So we cannot think, it's such a pity you're not learning this, you're doomed, you should be like me. If you attain enlightenment by relying on a certain method, for you, it might be that you have a very strong affinity with it, but for others, it might not be suitable. So these accomplished practitioners didn't declare to everyone, this method is the best for everyone. They didn't say that. Each of them said, considering what I have attained, speaking from my personal realization, the objects of cognition are the best method. Considering what I have attained, the object of sound is the best. Considering what I have attained, the object of smell is the best. Through their own experience, for someone like me, this is an excellent method. This is how they viewed it. That was the sixth disciple. Next we will discuss the six faculties, those who attained enlightenment by relying on the six sensory faculties. First, among the 25 disciples, this is the seventh, he relied on the eye faculty. Well, he relied on the eye faculty, yet not quite. He attained enlightenment without his eyes. This is Aniruddha. Aniruddha, we have shared his story before. He is also the Buddha's cousin, as we mentioned earlier. Aniruddha then stood up, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to him respectfully, "When I first entered the monastic life, I was too fond of sleep. The thus come one admonished me, saying that I was no better than an animal." Venerable Aniruddha stood up, and after bowing at the Buddha's feet, he spoke to the Buddha as follows, "When I first became a monk, I absolutely loved to sleep. I was always too fond of sleep. I hear that some of our Dharma friends here are also like this. They love to sleep, to an extreme degree. I've heard there are a few typical examples among the men who are quite typical, and there are also typical examples among the women. There are some among the lay people, and some among the monastics. This is what many people around you have been saying. Wow, this person can really sleep. If that's the case, tomorrow is Sunday, you guys might start doing that again. Too fond of sleep. At this time the thus come one scolded him. The thus come one scolded him. What did he say? He said he was no different from an animal. This is true. Some commentaries quote the exact words the thus come one used to scold him at the time. "Hey, hey, why are you sleeping?" Like the oysters and clams who sleep for 1,000 years without ever hearing the Buddha's name. Some commentaries have cited this. The Buddha reprimanded him very severely. Just then, Venerable Aniruddha had been sleeping the whole time. How did he say it? He said, "You are like these, what we call in the ocean shells and clams, and those conches people often eat. You are no different from them, because they stay deep in slumber at the bottom of the sea. Sleeping for over 1,000 years is no problem for them. If you do that, you will never even hear the Buddha's name." So the Buddha used this analogy of animals to scold Venerable Aniruddha. "After the Buddha scolded me, I rebuked myself and wept. For 7 days I did not sleep, and as a result I went blind in both eyes." In the end, after hearing the Buddha's exceptionally severe reprimand, he was deeply saddened. He cried continuously and blamed himself. Then he punished himself, going without sleep or slumber for 7 days and 7 nights. He was constantly diligent. Some of us are like this. We work very hard for 2 or 3 days, but then we sleep for the next 2 or 3 days. It's like that. Actually, regarding diligence, long-term diligence requires a kind of merit and habit from past lives. Otherwise, some people, upon hearing the merits of diligence and the faults of laziness, are like, wow, and get up early in the morning. They can keep it up for 2 or 3 days, thinking, I might be like this forever now. But later on, they collapse again. Once they collapse, they can't wake up for a long time. It seems that all those diligent days before are just pulled back by all the sleeping. Some people are like this, right? This is unavoidable. After all, we probably need enough sleep. However, from a scientific perspective nowadays, they say that sleeping too long is not good. They used to say sleeping 8 hours is fine, but now they say if you sleep for 8 hours you won't live long. For people who rarely move or exercise, it is also extremely unhealthy for the entire body, so a person should maintain a balance of sleep, activity, and rest. By combining these different factors, one can live a long life, including keeping our study, contemplation, and practice quite steady. I think most of our Dharma friends right now wake up quite early and go to bed quite late. This is considered pretty good. Actually, sometimes I feel that it's a bit better to have some kind of compelling force. That way you slowly get used to it. This is also very good. Some people are usually accustomed to sleeping a lot, but later, due to attending classes or various reasons, I heard some were frequently late, and after the Khenpos and Khenmos talked to them, they improved a little bit. However, due to their own habitual tendencies, generally they say it used to be like this: rushing to class while dreaming even while walking on the road. Well, people like this are still okay, wandering in dreams, attending class in dreams. Then there are some who sleep in the audience the entire time during class. After class is over, they have no idea, they don't even know what was covered. Then they ask others, "Where did the teaching just leave off? Are you not embarrassed by this?" So this is quite different from Aniruddha. In the end, he was so diligent that both his eyes went blind. He was probably as diligent as staring at a computer screen constantly. Both his eyes went blind. Then at this time the world-honored one taught me a Vajra Samadhi of taking delight in illuminative vision. As a result, without using my eyes, I could see everything in all 10 directions, with penetrating accuracy and clarity, just as one might see a piece of fruit in the palm of one's hand. Then the world-honored one saw Venerable Aniruddha had become like this and felt deep pity for him. He immediately gave him a teaching. He taught him what is called taking delight in illuminative vision. Taking delight in illuminative vision means truly being able to see one's original nature, this kind of samadhi. What is this called? A Vajra Samadhi, an indestructible Vajra Samadhi. His physical eyes were easily destroyed, but taking delight in illuminative vision can never be destroyed. It is a samadhi as solid as a Vajra. In reality, it is truly realizing the original face of the Tathagata Garbha, this kind of samadhi. Without using my eyes I could see. So at this time, Venerable Aniruddha did not need to rely on the eye faculty to see. He could observe all phenomena in all 10 directions, all of them with penetrating accuracy and clarity. The true, original, pure, real, luminous, and completely clear nature of all phenomena in the 10 directions was actually just like seeing an amala fruit in the palm of his hand. He could completely illuminate and see it. At this point he was not seeing through the faculty of the eye. Next, we might have some cases where, regarding the faculties, he didn't see with the eye faculty, didn't see with the physical faculty. There are probably cases like this. Regarding the faculties, seeing the original nature from a completely different level. At this time the Thus Come One verified my understanding, so it was that I became an arhat. The Thus Come One verified his realization, and he became an arhat. Perhaps in our secular world, losing the faculty of the eyes might actually be a favorable condition. All of us sitting here must also prepare ourselves, because in our later years some people's eyes might fail, some people's ears might fail, and some might have other faculties fail. These situations will inevitably occur. I have often wondered, what will I do if I lose my eyesight in my old age? Without ears, if I can't even die, what will I do? We should think about this. Take our Guru, His Holiness, for example. From 1990 all the way to 2004, for nearly 13 years, his eyes could not read texts, but his teaching and transmission of the Dharma continued without interruption. Whether bestowing empowerments or teaching the Dharma, it never stopped. He wasn't relying on his physical eyes to teach the Dharma. He must have been relying on a special wisdom and perseverance to teach. Once, when Khenpo Chimrigzin and I met in Kangding, he was quite seriously ill at the time. I said if I were this sick I might not be able to transform it into the path, but perhaps for you this is a favorable condition. Then I said, if you lose your eyesight, perhaps it might also be a better way for practice. Indeed, later on, through whatever means, even though he couldn't see, he had others record his words, and he composed many treatises. Therefore, for a person with perseverance, a strong person, even without the faculty of sight, their world does not actually become dark, just like Helen Keller. She lived in the last century, someone from the 19th and 20th centuries. In history, she was hailed as one of the greatest figures of the 19th century. because when she was very young, she had already lost both her hearing and her sight. But relying on her perseverance, she read the books she needed to read, and wrote the book. Many extremely famous books in the world, she managed to write them. Ultimately, people with healthy eyes couldn't compare to her at all. So sometimes when we look at the world, on one hand, we need the 6 faculties, they are very important. But if we lose them, from the perspective of the Shurangama Sutra, when this faculty is destroyed, from another angle, one can truly find enlightenment. That is the point. The Buddha has asked us how we broke through to enlightenment. If the Buddha asks me what my method of perfect penetration is, based on my realization, I believe that to turn the faculty of seeing around and trace it back to its source is the best method. This turning the faculty of seeing around and tracing it back to its source, turning the faculty of seeing around actually means reversing, or turning it backward and inward seeing. That is to say, without using the physical eye observing the source inwardly, we normally see by relying on the eye faculty. But his method breaks free from external visual objects and relies on another aspect of the eye faculty to seek out and find the source, truly discovering the original face of the Tathagata Garbha. This is his practice. For him, this is the foremost method. Not having eyes was even better. On the basis of having no physical eyes, I sought out my enlightenment. This is his method of practice. This brings us to what should be the 7th disciple. The 8th is Kṣudrapanthaka. We've also discussed him before. He attained enlightenment relying on the faculty of the nose, eyes, ears, nose. Right now it should be, just now it was the eye faculty, and next it should be the ear faculty is left for last. So here he speaks about relying on the faculty of the nose. Kṣudrapanthaka stood up, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to him respectfully, I have a poor memory and have little learning. Kṣudrapanthaka also stood up from his seat, and after bowing at the Buddha's feet, he said this to the Buddha, I currently lack a good memory in memorizing sutras and treatises, and I also lack extensive learning. I do not have such wisdom. When I first encountered the Buddha, heard the Dharma, and entered the monastic life, I tried to memorize a single line of one of the Thus Come One's verses. I tried for 100 days, but when I had learned the first part, I forgot the second, and when I learned the second, I forgot the first. He said, after I first encountered the Buddha, I heard the Dharma and entered the monastic life. After I ordained, the Buddha gave me a verse to recite. Gatha means he gave him a verse. He was asked to spend 100 days continuously memorizing this single verse. But during the process of memorizing this verse, when he had finally memorized the first part clearly, he would forget the second part. Then, when he memorized the second part clearly, he would forget the first part again. It kept going back and forth like this. Eventually, even the young cowherds around him had all memorized it perfectly clearly, but he still couldn't memorize it. Isn't it said in Zhenguofan's biography that one night when he was memorizing some texts, a thief was waiting around wanting to steal something? The thief kept waiting there, but Zhenguofan just couldn't memorize it. As dawn approached, he still hadn't memorized it. Then the thief got a bit angry. He directly recited the text from memory for Zhenguofan and then just left, because he couldn't steal anything, but he could memorize the text. It seems Zhenguofan was also a relatively slow person, but he put in constant effort. His character was quite similar to Kṣudrapanthaka's. In the end, within the history of his time, he was considered highly successful, but his memory wasn't very good. He was a very pragmatic person. So regarding Kṣudrapanthaka and that verse, regarding this verse he had, some commentaries also cite it. This verse is also found in the Vinaya Sutra, do no evil deed with body, speech or mind, give no trouble to any being in the world, with right thought, see the emptiness of the realm of desire, and keep your distance from unhelpful asceticism. Body and speech, which is what we call the 3 doors, do not commit evil actions through the 3 doors. It means do not commit non-virtuous actions. Also, do not trouble or harm any sentient being in the world. One should observe one's own mind with right mindfulness, ultimately reaching emptiness, because all the sensory objects one perceives, all become empty. Once they become empty, these unhelpful, meaningless sufferings that bring no benefit to oneself, keep your distance from all of them right now. Actually, the meaning of this verse is also very important for each of us. If we consider Kṣudrapanthaka's case, why did the Buddha personally give this to Kṣudrapanthaka and ask him to memorize it? It is also a very profound teaching. As a particularly profound teaching given by the Buddha to Kṣudrapanthaka, we should also see that, if we cannot memorize it ourselves, given 100 days, I believe that in 100 days, one should be able to memorize it. I even tried it myself this afternoon, and there shouldn't be any problem, so everyone should also recite and memorize it. Why was this Kṣudrapanthaka like this? Let me see if it's below. I think we've talked about it before. In a past life he had become a master of the canon, but he was stingy with the Dharma and would not teach others. And because of this karma, lifetime after lifetime, he became this kind of person, a person whose wisdom was quite dull. That is what happened. Therefore, in some of our other texts, it says he attained enlightenment by sweeping the floor. There is also this account. Regardless, Kṣudrapanthaka was still a very diligent person. The Buddha took pity on me for being so slow, and he instructed me to find a quiet place where I could regulate my breathing. The Buddha saw that he was very slow, so he felt special pity for him. After showing him special pity, he instructed him to retreat to a quiet place, because he truly had no way to memorize the verses. So he started to settle down in one place, and was told to regulate his breathing, to practice the contemplation of breath. The inhalations and exhalations are breathing. Regarding breathing, actually in many current practices, including many practices in Theravada Buddhism, this contemplation of breath is quite important. Generally, the breathing practices in tantric teachings were also taught in the 6 bardos. I don't know if everyone has forgotten it. We use Om Ahung. Om Ahung are the seed syllables of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind, the seed syllables of the body, speech, and mind of all Buddhas. In this way, when we breathe, when inhaling, we visualize a white Om syllable dissolving into our heart, when drawing the breath in, and then when resting, holding the breath, keeping the breath inside. At this time, it is the red Om syllable, the speech of all Buddhas, the Vajra speech. And then when it goes out, when exhaling, we visualize it turning into a blue Hung syllable. Om Ahung, just like this, Om Ahung. When inhaling it is Om, when holding it is Ah, and then when exhaling it is Hung. Visualizing it this way, eventually after a certain point you can naturally treat these 3 Om, Hung as one cycle, and you continuously count them in this manner. In tantric teachings there is also this Om Hung practice. It seems Nan Huai Chin said that regarding breathing, you only need to observe the holding of the breath in the middle. That is very important. Continuously count this. It's not about the coming and going. You don't need to count the inhalation and exhalation. Just focus on the holding of the breath. Make this the main focus. There seems to be this approach too. This might also be one of the traditional methods of practice. But regardless, if we practice breathing meditation, we should be stopping our conceptual thoughts. In the Samyukta Agama, the Buddha also in the past spent 2 months practicing in a closed retreat. Later, when the disciples asked him, he said he was also practicing the contemplation of breath. That's how he explained it. Therefore, this contemplation of breath is also very important in Buddhism. Actually, many secular disciplines nowadays, including some forms of yoga or some Qigong practices, also attach great importance to the contemplation of human breathing. Through this method, people have also attained enlightenment. But how did Kṣudrapanthaka attain enlightenment back then? Below, he recounts his experience of enlightenment. When he was contemplating his breath like this, he said, "I contemplated my breath in the most minute detail until I could discern in every instant its arising, continuing, diminishing, and ceasing. All of a sudden my mind was freed from every impediment." During the process of his contemplation, he observed his own breath, inhaling and exhaling. Ultimately, this breath of his, whether it was his faculties or the consciousness of this breath within his nasal faculty, these gradually became subtler and subtler until finally exhausted. Once exhausted, your entire, whether it is inhaling or exhaling, actually it's arising, continuing, ceasing, diminishing and changing, these four aspects finally, in a single instant, his mind suddenly opened to enlightenment. The entire process of arising, continuing, diminishing and ceasing, right at the moment he was breathing, he observed this movement of the breath. When observing its movement, he realized arising is unborn, continuing is non-abiding, and the change of diminishing is also non-existent, and finally, ceasing cannot be grasped either. Therefore, in a single instant, his original nature suddenly awakened. He fully understood selflessness, without a single real characteristic. At this time, there were no longer any major impediments. At that time, right while he was breathing, suddenly, because generally speaking we primarily breathe through the faculty of the nose, but relying on the nose faculty, actually the breath sometimes exists, and sometimes does not exist. But the most crucial point is the arising, continuing, diminishing and ceasing of the breath's movement. In an instant he fully comprehended its true nature, such that my outflows were ended. So it was that I became an arhat. At this moment all of his afflictions, all defiled phenomena, were ended, and he became an arhat. I took my place at the Buddha's feet, and he verified that I needed no further instruction. At the Buddha's feet, he immediately attained the fruition of no more learning, an arhat. The Buddha has asked us how we broke through to enlightenment. I believe that contemplating the emptiness of the breath is the best method. Then the Buddha asked me about this perfect penetration, the cause of bodhi, or the faculty of perfect penetration. So according to my realization, it is actually contemplating the emptiness of the breath. Contemplating the breath means not grasping at external sensory objects. Generally speaking, for the faculty of the nose, the external object is primarily smells, but you do not seek out the object of smell. Instead, the nose faculty turns inward to observe its own true nature. In doing so, he ultimately traced it back to emptiness, the true emptiness. This is the best method for him. Here, relying on the nose faculty might have been due to such karmic conditions, but the nose faculty is, after all, a phenomenon of our conventional world. By relying on the nose faculty, he then sought the true dharma of emptiness. Because Kṣudrapanthaka was quite slow, and his memory was very poor, but even with a poor memory his nose worked quite well. Therefore the ones the Buddha spoke of today, apart from Venerable Mahākāśyapa, include the one without eyes, the one who was slow, and the one whose tongue was flawed below. Many of them are what we might call today, using rather unpleasant terms, people whose faculties are incomplete. Yet they turned out to be extraordinarily capable, each one more so than the last. Although we have all 6 faculties, we have eyes, ears and a nose, we still haven't attained enlightenment, so sometimes it's hard to say. Perhaps in some sense when a person is sick, encounters adversity, or has incomplete faculties, at that time conversely, they might generate a powerful inner strength, which can become the cause for enlightenment. This kind of situation is also possible. This was the 8th disciple who attained accomplishment by relying on the nose faculty. Next is the one who attained accomplishment by relying on the tongue faculty. This is called Gavampati, which we also talked about earlier, the cow-lord bhikshu or the cow-cud-chewing bhikshu. So Gavampati also stood up, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to him respectfully, I committed an offense in the karma of speech. Once during an eon in the past, I insulted an elder monk, and as a result in life after life, I have suffered from an illness which causes me to chew like a cow. Bhikshu Gavampati. Gavampati means chewing the cud. Here, for this Bhikshu Gavampati, he stood up from his seat, bowed at the Buddha's feet and then reported to the Buddha, I have committed negative karma of speech. During a past eon, he mocked and slandered a monk. Consequently, lifetime after lifetime he had this, which shares the characteristics of a cow, the illness of chewing the cud. So in his past, some commentaries also explain what happened back then. We've talked about this before, right? There was an elder monk in the Sangha. His teeth were bad, so when he ate, he kept struggling to swallow. He was the manager or something at the time. And he said, "Hurry up and eat. You eat just like a yak." He used words like this to mock him. Because of this cause, he was reborn as a cow for many lifetimes. Eventually, in this life as someone who has a last identity, the habit of a cow had still not been severed. I've explained this before, this trait of cows. The way they chew their food is quite unique. During the day they continuously eat lots and lots of grass. Then they store it in another part of their stomach, and when they have free time at night, they chew the cud, they bring it back up and chew it all over again. They keep doing this. Generally they chew all night long, whether they are calves or adult cows. I've mentioned this before, right? When we were young, often inside the tents, especially in winter, we would sleep together with the little yaks, because otherwise it would be too cold for the little yaks outside. Sometimes when we were asleep at night, those little calves would sometimes urinate or excrete dung, but we seemed to be used to it, so it didn't matter. You'd wake up at night, go ah, and just push them away a bit, and then go back to sleep. We lived right alongside the cows like this. We didn't really feel it was dirty, but sometimes when they slept, they would just be going smack smack all night long, constantly chewing the grass they ate during the day. Listening to this while sleeping, it felt just like our background music. It's a habit from childhood, you know. Sometimes even now when I see a herd of cows on the grassland when they are chewing grass, I sometimes go over and listen for a bit. I actually think it sounds quite pleasant. This is a small habit remaining from childhood, so cows have this habit, and when we humans eat, some people just can't swallow it down and keep chewing and chewing. This was the condition he had. The thus come one showed me how, by practicing a dharma of the mind ground, I could make all flavors become one, and so be purified. By this practice my distinction-making mind ceased, and I entered samadhi. Then the Buddha also taught him a special method, the pure mind of one flavor, regarding his own mind. Consistently observing it as pure, he immediately attained the purification of its true nature. Because if we consider all phenomena as one flavor, flavor means to chew with the tongue, and after chewing, all these different flavors completely merge into a single essence. This is called one flavor. We might have sour, sweet, bitter, spicy, salty, all kinds of tastes, but if you ultimately chew them into a single flavor, then there is nothing else remaining. Similarly, all Dharma doors, the thus come one taught me the one flavor. Whether profound or superficial, good or bad, all Dharma doors are of one flavor. What is this one flavor? It is emptiness, the Dharma door of non-duality. Everyone knows the Dharma door of non-duality, so the Buddha taught him about emptiness, purity, this Dharma door of non-duality and one flavor. If all flavors are entirely one entity, then there are no other extremes or partialities. The Dharma is also like this. My distinction-making mind ceased. At that time, Bhikshu Gavampati attained this state of mind where all attachments are completely extinguished, and he entered into this samadhi. Then my contemplation was that the knowledge of flavors does not come from the tongue faculty, and does not come from any object of taste. By means of this contemplation, I transcended all worldly outflows. Then he began to contemplate the true nature of this mind, no matter what it is, for example, whatever you eat in your mouth. As he chewed, perhaps because he chewed the cud, when chewing the cud, while chewing like this, during this very process, he observed his own mind, observed his own awareness. At this moment it is neither the faculty nor the object, it is not one's own physical body, because if it were the physical body, it is inanimate, it cannot possibly possess awareness, so it's not the body, and it is not the object either, it is not the so-called grass or the other things he was chewing. Whether we talk about chili peppers or sweet things, it is none of these either, because these things cannot possibly possess awareness. It seems it wouldn't work without them, but the awareness is not them either. The body, the things you chew in your mouth, and your awareness, these three must be beyond description. So at this moment I transcended. In such a fleeting instant, what did he transcended? He transcended all defiled phenomena of the world. Subject and object entirely perish, what we call the extinguishing of both subject and object. All graspers and the grasped, all phenomena with marks and without marks are all completely obliterated. At that time, within, I let go of my mind and body, and without, I took my leave of this world. I left the three realms of existence far behind. I was like a bird escaping from its cage. I departed from all impurity, and put an end to my defilements, and my Dharma eye became clear. So it was that I became an arhat. It was at this moment that he inwardly detached from the entire body and mind, including all the fetters of the five aggregates, realizing the selflessness of persons. Then outwardly he left behind the entire world. He left behind all phenomena, primarily the six sense objects. At this point he had realized the selflessness of phenomena, therefore he left the three realms of existence far behind. Just like a bird flying out of its cage, he departed from all stains and impurities, and after his Dharma eye became clear and pure, he attained the fruition of an arhat. So Gavampati, this is how he attained it. The Thus Come One himself verified that I need no further instruction. After the Thus Come One verified him, he entered the path of no more learning. The Buddha has asked us how we broke through to enlightenment. I believe that redirecting the awareness of flavor away from the flavors and back to itself is the best method. This redirecting the awareness of flavor away from the flavors and back to itself works like this. If I am asked to answer, I feel it is best to explain it from the perspective of the tongue faculty. Regarding the tongue faculty, our tongue faculty is what seeks out flavors. But if you redirect the aspect of flavors inward, it is actually the nature of the mind, the original face of the Tathagata Garbha. Only in this way can one know its source. Only then can one know its true reality. This is the foremost Dharma door, the supreme method. For him, the tongue faculty was extremely important. Even though he struggled to chew things properly, for him this actually became the true cause of his liberation. Relying on this, he attained liberation. So we can see that whether it is Kṣudrapanthaka or Bhikshu Gavampati, they all, what was a certain defect in their own physical bodies, actually transformed into the cause of their enlightenment. Of course, this is also related to their past actions, their own slandering and creating negative karma. Because of this special identity, the Buddha perhaps also gave them special attention. Therefore, whether it's our Khenpos, Khenmos, or anyone else, on one hand, for those whose roots of virtue are quite good, but whose physical condition seems inferior to others, who, when compared to others, have certain weaknesses, for these people we should be even more compassionate towards them. Perhaps in their spiritual practice, by relying on their own shortcomings and applying even greater effort, this can also become a cause for enlightenment. This is entirely possible, so everyone should understand this kind of dependent origination. We will conclude today's teaching on the Śūraṅgama Sutra here.
Kirgana jirano chukai chupun zolen droa droa
bandangara badna asadarda bandangara badna asadarda bandangara badna asadarda